Life and Death, Another 5 Infamous Fables of Existence. By Nathan Hine. What Goes Around? Chapter 1. It was a dark Friday night. It was the sort of dark that seemed to swallow sound. A thin veil of fog clung to the endless pines of a forest surrounding the only illumination, which came from a lone, flickering street lamp that hummed above a weathered concrete wall. A black limo, its windows blacked out with a matte film, rolled silently on a path that went from the concrete wall to a lone building sitting at the other end. The road to Christie Manor was nothing but a ribbon of cracked asphalt swallowed by shadows. The tires were crunching over loose gravel. Inside, the driver was a silhouette, the seat empty of any human shape, just a faint glow from the dashboard and a rhythmic thrum that suggested an engine idling in a low-gear sleep. The vehicle finally stopped at the end of the long path, and a single woman stepped out of the back door. After she closed the back door again, the driver didn't speak and didn't even turn their head. They just waited, their face obscured by darkness, until Abby was clear of the car and then pulled away without a word. The limo was gone without any hesitation, like a whisper in the night. "Ablina," Abby, Sirocco gasped as the vehicle left. It took a few moments for her to gain her composure again. She turned to look at the manor. Her stilettos clicked sharply against the gravel as she did. She adjusted her red lipsticked mouth into a smirk as she scanned the looming silhouette ahead. She adjusted her sleek black bobbed hair and the lapel of her tailored navy suit. "What the hell kind of game is this?" she muttered, eyeing the 3-story Gothic-style estate perched like a vulture atop the hill. Ivy coiled up weathered stone walls. One window flickered with candlelight. The rest were black. She scanned the empty lot with a practiced, businesslike efficiency, eyes flicking from the dim wall to the sky, as if mapping an exit route before she made her way to the large front door. After Abby's shadow disappeared into the manor, Mimi Dormer arrived next in a limo similar to the first that arrived and gleamed under the moon. She stepped out delicately, one gloved hand clutching her designer clutch, the other brushing a wave of platinum hair from her cheek. Her makeup was flawless, as always, with a pearl highlight, smoky eyes, and a pouty pink gloss. But her smile faltered when she looked at the manor in front of her. "Well, this is dramatic," Mimi said, voice lilting with forced cheer. "Are we filming a horror movie?" Just like with Abby, there was no speaking from the driver. The limo just left back down the path and out of sight. Mimi walked her way up to the manor nervously. Desmond Caldwell arrived next, the black ponytail swaying as he moved. He wore an all-black ensemble of a leather jacket, slim jeans, and boots. It was all accented only by a thin silver chain that caught the light. The darkness of his eyeliner seemed to swallow his eyes, leaving only a vague, distant look. He lingered, hands deep in his pockets, as if weighing the building's aura. "This is interesting," he muttered under his breath. The rest of them all arrived one by one. Cutler Schneider bounded in with a grin that seemed to stretch his cheeks. His blonde curls bounced, his gap-toothed smile beaming under the dim light. He wore a plaid shirt unbuttoned over a bright tee. Lily Belladonna made her entrance. Her messy pixie cut was peppered with a few rebellious strands, and the leather jacket hugged her lithe frame. A raven tattoo glimmered on her wrist as she rolled up her sleeves. She crossed her arms, a grin twisted on her lips. Mort Graves, his red hair barely visible under a hoodie drawn over his head, his round glasses reflecting the dim light like twin moons. Ainara Hayyan arrived quietly, her modest clothing blending into the fog. She walked with a slight hesitation, her black ponytail swaying just enough to catch a gasp of wind. Her glasses slid down her nose as she looked around, searching for a familiar face to anchor herself. Felix Brecker thundered forward, his towering frame making the air seem to compress. His dreadlocks swung as he moved, a bright sports jersey proclaiming his favorite team. Robert Watts, his buzz cut immaculate, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting a dim glow. Finally, Justine Zadok arrived last, her dark hair braided with beads that clinked softly with each step. She wore earth-tone clothing that seemed to merge with the night, a silver ring gleaming on her wrist. It was her tribe's symbol, a reminder of grounding roots. Her eyes, a steady brown, swept across the front of the manor. All of them were met with the same instruction when they entered the manor, a note on the front door that read, "Proceed to the east parlor." Each of them followed the signs until they entered a long, candlelit room. A towering ceiling loomed above a polished wooden table the length of a small banquet hall. The walls were paneled in dark oak, each panel inset with a faint amber light that gave the room a warm yet eerie glow. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something metallic, perhaps the lingering residue of a long-forgotten industrial use. A soft hum of an unseen ventilation system was the only sound, punctuated now and then by the distant rustle of wind against the building's outer walls. At the center sat a massive mahogany table. 10 chairs, 10 name cards. The cards read, in order, Abelina, Mimi, Desmond, Cutler, Lilith, Mort, Inera, Felix, Robert, Justine. Every one of them took a seat, some with the confidence of a boardroom, others with the tentative caution of someone stepping onto a stage for the first time. It feels like a seance, Mimi said, as she sat down with a delicate sigh. Or a cult initiation. Monday morning. Chapter 1. The thin light that slipped through the cracked blinds fell in a thin, wavering line across the cracked plaster of the bedroom inside of the Seaton's family home. It painted the chipped linoleum in a pale, indifferent shade that seemed to ask the same question Bill had asked 1,000 mornings before. Is she going to give me a hard time this morning? Bill stood at the edge of the narrow doorway, his shoulder-length hair a peppered mix of brown and the first few white threads that had begun to show up like stray snow in a winter storm. He wore a faded work shirt that already had the greasy imprint from years and years of working in the factory. His brown, heavy eyes were already scanning the clock on the wall. "Chloe," he said, voice low, the way he always spoke when he tried to be gentle with her. "Time to get up. You have to go to school." Chloe lay under the thin blanket, a phantom weight of exhaustion pulling her deeper into the mattress. Her eyes were a dull brown, the same as her father's, but they seemed to have lost their luster years ago, dimmed by the endless routine of a house that never quite had enough. A thin, wiry frame that was barely more than a shadow shifted a little as she tried to shrug off the cold that crept through the thin walls. She rolled onto her side, pulling the blanket up to her chin, and let out a breath that sounded more like a sigh than a protest. "Dad, can I skip today?" she whispered, the words barely making it past her lips. "I don't need to go. I don't have to." Bill's shoulders tightened. He stepped closer, the faint scrape of his shoes against the floor a metronome to his growing impatience. "Chloe, you need to go. You've missed enough already this year." Her mouth formed a half-smile that quickly died, a thin line that betrayed the frustration she tried to bottle inside. It was a dialogue she knew by heart. It was a script rehearsed in the empty spaces left by a mother who had walked out, taking with her the warm, steady hum of a family that had once been. "Dad," she said, her voice a brittle whisper, "you always say the same thing. It's always about responsibilities." It's about doing what's right," Bill cut in, his tone softening as he realized the edge in her voice. He placed a calloused hand on the back of his neck. "I'm not trying to make you miserable. We both have to do what we need to do. You have school, I have the factory. We both have our responsibilities. We're barely staying afloat here, Chloe." She stared at the cracked plaster, noting the way the light fell in thin, unforgiving strips on the walls. It was just like the cracks that spread across her thoughts. For a moment, the bedroom seemed to hold its breath, the silence hanging heavier than any words could. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of every lost night, she nodded, a motion that was more about surrender than agreement. "Fine," she muttered. "I'll get up." Invisible. Chapter 1. The Veritas Scientific Institute was a monument sculpted from polished chrome and triple-layered glass, a towering promise against the utilitarian skyline of the city. At night, its upper floors burned with an intense, blue-white light, symbolizing the ferocious intellectual energy contained within. The Institute was where the future was manufactured, where complex realities were distilled into elegant equations, and where men and women with minds like supercomputers chased the elusive physics that governed existence. And then there was Corey Holden. Corey operated in the lowest stratum of this intellectual hierarchy, invisible beneath the brilliance. His official designation was Facilities Maintenance Specialist, but everyone called him Janitor. He was the inverse of Veritas's mission. He didn't unravel secrets. He merely wiped up the messes made by those who did. His employment was a dark joke, a masterstroke of bureaucratic security. Dr. Alastair Finch, the chief security architect, had specifically requested an individual who possessed a low-to-average intelligence quotient. The rationale was chillingly pragmatic. Corey was fundamentally incapable of processing the sensitive data he might accidentally encounter. He could sweep up discarded schematics for a temporal displacement field and register them only as waste paper. He lacked the cognitive framework, the prerequisite knowledge, to understand the universe-breaking secrets that were engrossed inside of the Institute. Corey was small, his frame hunched perpetually forward, a silhouette accustomed to being ignored. His hair was shaggy and the color of dust like a dog. His eyes, a muted brown, seemed to reflect the gray industrial mop heads more often than the dazzling screens of the labs. His uniform was a pale olive shade. It blended perfectly with the shadowed corners and utility closets. He moved with a practiced, almost unnerving silence, the soft shush of his cleaning implements the only evidence of his passing. His day began at 4 p.m. Most of the great minds were leaving or had retreated to their equally brilliant homes. But sometimes, the obsessed ones remained, fueled by caffeine, frustration, and the scent of imminent discovery. One such fixture was Dr. Eris Thorne, head of the Optical Camouflage Division. Thorne was a man whose intellect was inversely proportional to his patience. His office, typically a vortex of forgotten coffee cups and discarded calculation sheets, was ground zero for his tempestuous moods. More than once, Corey was carefully navigating the lab in Thorne's annex when the command sliced the quiet air. "Janitor, you missed a spot." Corey froze, his bucket handle clattering softly against the wall. He turned toward Thorne, who was hunched over an oscilloscope, glowing green, his face barely visible behind the screen's light. Thorne didn't lift his head. The accusation was delivered to the ether. Corey's gaze fell to the floor, a dark, drying ring of espresso. It was mere inches from the large, laminated sign Thorne himself had insisted upon after a minor biohazard scare. "Clean up your messes. Zero tolerance." Corey didn't argue. He didn't even sigh. He simply pulled a specialized microfiber cloth from his cart, dabbed it with solution, and knelt. As he wiped the stain, his peripheral vision noted the complex string of mathematical notation scrawled across the whiteboard, a dense language of tensors and manifolds related to bending spacetime. He registered the shapes, the lines, and the chalk dust left on his knee. He didn't register the meaning. "There," Thorne grunted, finally glancing over, but his focus was immediately drawn back to the scope reading. "Good. Now get that bin. It's overflowing with failure." "Yes, Doctor," Corey murmured, the apology forming silently on his lips despite the obvious injustice. He was programmed for compliance, survival achieved through absolute minimization of self. The disrespect was pervasive, a climate Corey breathed every night. It wasn't just an accidental oversight. It was deliberate, performative disdain, a way for these brilliant people to reinforce their own elevated standing. One evening, he was detailing the bench in the lab, an area usually kept meticulously clean due to the sensitive nature of the equipment. Dr. Bethany Curie, a highly strung scientist who worked with Dr. Thorne, with notoriously sharp elbows, an attitude to match, and a degree in theoretical physics that dwarfed Corey's entire life experience, was packing up. She watched him approach her workstation, a pristine area she had been working at for 18 straight hours, and suddenly remembered something. She plucked a wadded tissue from her pocket, thick with mucus and lipstick, and placed it precisely on the polished stainless steel bench, right where Corey's cloth was heading. "Oh, janitor," she chirped, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, failing to mask the contempt in her eyes. She didn't address him by name because she didn't know it and likely didn't care to. "Could you just dispose of that? It's a bit biohazardous." The implication hung in the air. "This waste is beneath me, but perfectly suited for you." Bethany watched, a silent scream of disgust building beneath her skin, waiting for the inevitable flicker of annoyance, the slightest roll of the eyes that would signify Corey's recognition of her sheer arrogance. She expected human resistance, the dignity of refusal. But Corey didn't deliver it. His face remained an impassive mask, his muted brown eyes meeting hers for a fleeting second. It was a vacant, non-judgmental stare that was somehow worse than any protest. He reached out a gloved hand and picked up the soiled tissue. He placed it in a small, labeled biohazard bag on his cart, meant for chemical waste, then resumed wiping the bench as if the incident were merely another routine task, like emptying a paper shredder. This lack of emotion confounded the scientists. They expected the janitor to be angry, perhaps even secretly resentful and plotting. But Corey simply was. He was a vacuum that absorbed their messes, their physical detritus, and their emotional carelessness, requiring no acknowledgement or thanks. To the occupants of Veritas, Corey wasn't just dimmer than the dimmest bulb. He was functionally inanimate. He was a small, stooped fixture, too insignificant to remember, too low to bother addressing by name. He was janitor, or you, and often not even that. He was merely the effect of cleanliness that appeared overnight, and Corey just went along with it. He pushed his cart down the silent corridors, past shimmering displays detailing breakthroughs in fusion kinetics and dark matter stabilization. He saw the world's most advanced thoughts written in chalk and ink, understood none of it, and kept wiping. But as he moved through the institute, meticulously buffing the floors upon which genius trod, Corey was the ultimate security system. He saw the frayed nerves of the lead researchers, the moments of despair hidden behind locked doors, and the illicit whiskey bottle tucked into Dr. Thorne's lower desk drawer after a massive failure. He saw the human cost of relentless ambition. He was the silent, non-comprehending witness to the deepest secrets of the universe, and ironically, the deepest frailties of the brilliant minds trying to unlock them. They had hired him because he couldn't understand the science, never realizing that he understood the humans far better than they understood him. The Raid. Chapter 1. Detective William Miles was a man who was worn down by time and obsession. He had stood at average height but often slumped, a physical manifestation of his burden. His face is a roadmap of his career, with deep-set wrinkles around his eyes and a permanent furrow in his brow. His hair, once thick and dark, is now a steely gray, thinning and often unkempt. His eyes are his most striking feature, a tired, piercing blue that has seen too much, yet still holds a fierce, burning intensity. He has a faint, jagged scar on his left cheek, a memento from a suspect years ago. His face is a roadmap of failure. He is lean, almost gaunt, as if his obsession has consumed his body fat. Miller sat in the driver's seat of the armored SUV as rain hammered against the windshield, which mirrored the uneasy rhythm thudding in his chest. The monotonous drumbeats of the rain and his heartbeat were a complete contrast to the unbearable silence inside of the SUV. The waiting before the raid can be just as intense as the action that occurs during it, maybe even more so. Your body can be moving so fast that your brain needs time to catch up while in the middle of it, whereas sitting and thinking without the movement of the body makes the mind go into an infinite number of what-if scenarios. Ahead, through the dense, rain-slicked pines, a hulking silhouette of a house loomed. Isolated. That was the word that kept replaying in Miles's mind. Isolated. Perfect for a monster to hide, and it was perfect for a nightmare to unfold. Miles tugged his beige trench coat tighter, the worn material smelling faintly of damp wool and cheap whiskey. He ran a thumb over the jagged scar on his left cheek. His piercing eyes were fixed on the house. The cause behind all of this grief. "All right, team," SWAT team leader Alejandro Ramirez said, breaking the silence while sitting next to Miles in the passenger seat. "This is it. Silas Black. He is suspected to have committed several murders throughout the years. They were particularly gruesome. Intelligence confirms that he's here. Standard entry, maintain formation. We don't know what we're walking into." He adjusted his comms headset under his helmet. His voice, usually a deep rumble, was clinical and clipped through the comms. He glanced at Miles. His eyes narrowed in professional impatience. "Detective, stay behind the stack. If he's armed, we engage." Alejandro Ramirez, the imposing structure of the SWAT team leader, had a densely muscular build. It is a reflection of years of carrying heavy tactical gear and intense physical training. He has dark, close-cropped hair that is beginning to show flecks of gray at the temples. His eyes are dark brown, usually narrowed in perpetual concentration. He has a faded scar running along his jawline from a previous mission. Ramirez is always impeccably geared. His standard uniform includes level 3+ ballistic plates, a fully enclosed helmet with integrated communications, and NVG mounts, and dark, non-reflective tactical armor. He favors utility and function over flash. Even off-duty, he projects an aura of readiness. Miles leaned forward, the furrow in his brow deepening. Ramirez, listen to me. I need him alive. He's not talking unless he has a pulse. There are things he knows about the others, the victims we haven't found yet. Ramirez merely nodded, but the gesture was dismissive. My priority is team safety and neutralizing the threat, Miles. You found the location. We finished the job. Lethal force is authorized if necessary. Miles sighed, a weary exhalation that fogged the window. He patted the heavy frame of his Smith & Wesson Model 686 revolver, a non-negotiable insurance policy. His tired blue eyes burned with the singular intensity of a man who had sacrificed everything for this moment. Ramirez's eyes looked back at his team in the back of the SUV, sitting on bench seats that ran along both sides of the back. There were 2 people to the left, Jensen and Chun, and 2 to the right, Reyes and O'Malley. The team checked their gear. Mark Jensen, the embodiment of steady calm, adjusted the scope on his suppressed primary weapon. He is the quintessential silent professional within Ramirez's SWAT unit. He's the steady hand, the keen eye, and the unwavering presence that the team relies on. Jensen is known for his exemplary marksmanship, meticulous preparation, and almost preternatural calm in high-stress situations. He's not one for grandstanding or unnecessary chatter, preferring to let his actions speak for themselves. Jensen possesses the lean, powerful build of someone who prioritizes functional strength and endurance. His movements are precise and economical. He often carries a focused, almost intense expression, which softens only slightly when interacting with his closest teammates off-duty. Elena Reyes gave a sharp, Spanish-flavored sigh. Let's not make this a long night, Commander. My boots are waterproof, but my patience isn't. Reyes is strikingly small for a SWAT officer, a fact she uses to her immense advantage. Her physique is not bulky but rather compact and densely muscled, a result of years spent in competitive high-impact sports. Her low center of gravity contributes to exceptional agility and stability in close-quarters combat. Elena is fiercely competitive and has zero tolerance for anyone who underestimates her based on her stature or gender. She views slights as fuel. Her communication style is direct, often abrasive, and heavily laced with sharp Spanish-flavored sarcasm. She is quick to call out errors and slow to offer praise. Jihao Chun, a quiet tactical expert, gave a silent nod, his dark eyes like sensors sweeping the immediate surroundings. He maintains a neat, military-style haircut and is always clean-shaven. His eyes are his most noticeable feature, dark, intense, and constantly scanning. Chun is the quietest member of the SWAT team, operating with the precision and dispassion of a highly calibrated machine. He has a near-pathological focus on efficiency and minimizing variables. Caitlin O'Malley simply checked her rifle's magazine, her powerful frame radiating competence. No need for words. She is larger, solid, and powerfully built. She is not just tall but also possesses a strong, sturdy frame honed by weightlifting and functional fitness. She moves with a surprising, quiet grace for her size. She is intensely observant, preferring to listen and assess a situation thoroughly before speaking. She projects an aura of unshakable calm and competence, which has a stabilizing effect on her teammates. The infamous O'Malley filter. When provoked, either by a critical tactical oversight that needs immediate correction or by someone displaying incompetence, cruelty, or bigotry, her calm shatters. She unleashes a torrent of sharp and creatively profane criticism. It leaves no room for misinterpretation. It is not emotional yelling. It is a precise, verbal scalping designed to eviscerate the target's argument or ego. The silence that follows one of her eruptions is known as O'Malley's aftermath. All right, team. Let's go, Ramirez commanded. The 6 of them disembarked from the SUV 50 yards from the target. It was a sprawling, fortress-like structure of dark, stained stone. The heavy rain muted their steps, turning the muddy approach into a slick, silent track. Ramirez led the group. He was a towering figure even weighed down by level 3+ ballistic plates. He moved like a perfectly tensioned spring, his weapon held at the low ready position. Jensen followed right behind. His movements were precise and economical. He adjusted the sling, his intense focus already projecting outward toward the shadows of the porch. Elena Reyes, fourth in the line, radiating condensed kinetic energy. Think this black bastard has any taste, Kate? Or is it just going to smell like cheap meat and panic? Her voice was a low, Spanish-flavored abrasive whisper over her shoulder to Omali, who was last in the team. The only one behind her was Miles, the detective. Caitlin O'Malley didn't look at Reyes. Her gaze was already assessing the approach vector. Stay focused, Reyes. Noise discipline. Ji Hao Chun, who was in the middle of the line, already had the breaching charge ready. He moved with the dispassionate efficiency of a machine, scanning the perimeter for threats, variables he might need to eliminate. Ramirez raised a gloved fist. The team stacked up against the brick wall flanking the heavy oak front door. Chun, 3 count, Ramirez ordered softly over the private comms loop. Chun positioned the charge. Reyes held a flashbang grenade, her compact muscles coiled, ready to launch. Click. The sound of the detonating cord seating was barely audible over the ring. Miles, despite Ramirez's order, stayed close, pressed against the wet brick, his old trench coat plastered to his vest. He didn't belong here, but he couldn't stand back. The exhaustion in his eyes was overshadowed by the fierce, burning intensity of a man's obsession. It wasn't just a want but a need. He had to get Silas Black. It was his everything. More important than his failed marriage. More important than his health. More important than his life itself. 1, Ramirez whispered. 2, Miles gripped his revolver. Alive. Must be alive. 3, breach. The clowns. Chapter 1, The Escape. The air inside Blackwood Asylum was perpetually chilled, thick with the scent of disinfectant, stale sweat, and suppressed madness. It was an environment designed to crush the will, but 5 men had cultivated their desires in the darkness, growing them into sharp, intricate weapons in order to escape. The time arrived at the heart of the midnight shift change. The leader, confined to the end cell, had been tapping a steady, almost musical beat against the steel bed frame. The rhythm was hypnotic, a metronome counting down to liberation. When the tapping ceased, the silence was absolute. The signal had been passed throughout the ward to the others. The smartest, his eyes gleaming behind the thick, institutional glasses he still wore, operated with the delicate patience of a watchmaker. He had spent months analyzing the quality of the screws on his door hinge, noting the microscopic tolerances in the iron composition. Using a sharpened piece of cutlery he'd claimed from a forgotten meal tray, he was already manipulating the complex tumblers of the primary lock. No force was needed, only understanding. A low, resonant whisper echoed from the giant of the group, who occupied the opposing cell. The giant was a towering presence, his bulk straining the confines of his mattress. Yet his movements were surprisingly minimal. He used his immense height and reached to wedge a spoon handle firmly into the gap above his door. The time is nigh, the stars align. The leader's voice cut through the silence, maintaining a quiet, confident sing-song quality. The lock must yield, the path defined. The smartest adjusted his angle. With a muffled thunk that sounded massive in the enclosed space, the bolt drew back. The door swung inward. The escaping symphony began. The smartest was out first, moving instantly to the control panel at the end of the wing. His task was to buy them 60 seconds of genuine darkness. Next came the rebel. He moved with coiled aggression, clad in nothing but the thin cotton gown, his posture radiating hostility. His role was deterrence. The escape route required them to exit the main ward and traverse the administration hall. It was monitored by a slow-witted orderly named Jenkins. Jenkins, as the smartest knew, always paused at the third pillar to adjust his belt. As the 5 crept into the corridor, a shadow shifted 20 feet away. Jenkins had paused. It was the rebel's cue. He surged forward, a blur of white fabric. The confrontation was instantaneous, brutal, and silent. There was the sound of a sharp intake of breath, a wet, choking gasp instantly silenced permanently by a precise strike to the base of the skull. The rebel pinned the body to the floor with practiced efficiency, ensuring no limb scraped the polished linoleum, as he chuckled silently to himself about taking another life. A quiet blow, a silent friend, the leader noted, stepping over the prone figure without breaking stride. The first small knot upon the end. The greatest obstacle lay ahead. the high window leading to the maintenance shaft, situated 12 feet above the floor. This was where the final two men became crucial. The giant stepped forward, his head nearly brushing the ceiling. Two of the men leveraged the small, nimble body of the midget onto the giant's massive shoulders. From this dizzying height, the midget could reach the latches of the high window, designed to be inaccessible to even the tallest inmates. The midget, whose small stature had cursed him in the outside world, was now their living key. His hands, though small, were immensely strong from years of gripping high bars. With a strain of muscle and a decisive snap, the lock mechanism gave way. The giant gently lowered the midget back to the floor. The smartest quickly secured the window open, peeling back the rusted mesh screening. It was a tight squeeze. The leader went first, followed by the rebel. The smartest slipped through next, pulling the gown tightly around himself. The midget slid through effortlessly. The giant followed last, his broad shoulders scraping stone and tearing fabric, the metal frame groaning in protest before he dropped heavily onto the dusty boiler room floor below. They were out of the main block. The symphony of the escape had concluded with a final, echoing metallic clang of the service hatch closing behind them. They followed the tight, sewage-scented tunnels that the smartest had mapped out from stolen architectural plans, leading them to a forgotten sub-basement storage area. It was the confiscation room 4B. This was their true destination, the chrysalis where they would shed the drab remnants of their institutional identities. The smartest, pulling a sheaf of notes from his waistband, located the recessed lockbox. Inside, they found what the institution had stripped from them, their true callings, packaged as evidence.